How y'all feel? Everybody all right? Okay. Before we continue, we got to give it up for the bleacher people back here. Been sitting down this entire time. My God. Held those fake smiles this entire time. I'm joking. Must be hard, but you know what? It's well worth the wait of what's coming up next. This is the part of the program that I'm really excited about. Once I heard about it, it's the performance of the Telling Project. Okay? Now, in the Telling Project, we have a program centered on the premise that honesty and open-mindedness are core values that make up a democracy. The Telling Project reminds us that one of the best ways to reach out to our fellow citizens is try to understand each other and simply to listen to each other. And here to introduce the performance is Wes Moore. Wow, that's a snazzy dressed man right here. Wes has devoted years of his life to our country in both the military and in the government. First, he served in the 82nd Airborne in Afghanistan. Then he entered public service, working as a White House fellow and a special assistant to the Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. Come on out here, Wes. He also has a Rhodes Scholar and a soon-to-be-published author. Would you please welcome the most snazziest dresser in the room today, Mr. Wes Moore. What's up with you, brother? Good to see you, man. Man, pleasure's mine, brother. All right? Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sway. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for your continued commitment to the veterans. Appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. And it's an honor to be here and to speak to you all today, particularly on Veterans Day, because that title veteran, I know, is not one that comes easily. I spent much of 2005 and 2006 serving in the border region of Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne Division, with the bravest men and women that I've ever met in my life. And to them, there was never any challenge that was too difficult, never any day that was too long, or never any teammate that was too inconsequential. These young men came from Maine and Michigan and New York and New Mexico. Now, some joined for the chance to attend college because the Army would give them money, for the military would give them money. Some joined because they wanted to give something back to the country that welcomed their families generations ago, and in some of their cases, just years ago. Some left great colleges like GW. Some left great colleges like GW because they wanted to embrace the chance to serve and embrace a sense of adventure. And some decided to join the military because the horrors of watching planes being used as bombs, towers falling, and a rural field in Pennsylvania becoming a graveyard of heroes. All, however, served with one goal in mind. And that goal was to protect our nation and protect our fellow servicemen and women. And the entire time that we were over there, we carried an immeasurable love and concern from our fellow countrymates. Many of you in this room who never forgot about us in your thoughts and prayers. You sent us letters that made us smile. You shared your personal stories to remind us why we were fighting. And you sent care packages with every cookie, cake, brownie imaginable. But in essence, what you did and your service to us served as a continual reminder about why we love our country so much and why we're willing to sacrifice it all for her. So on this Veterans Day, we thank you not only for remembering us and also our fallen brothers and sisters, but we thank you for the service that you do for our country every day that reminds us why this nation is worth fighting for in the first place. Listen, I mean, it's imperative. It is absolutely as imperative that you accomplish your mission as servant leaders as it is that we accomplish ours as military personnel. Mentors, teachers, firefighters, police, big brothers and big sisters, parents, and everyone else who makes it a point to make sure that public service doesn't necessarily have to be an occupation, but the public service becomes a way of life. You understand certain fundamentals. You understand that if a city has a 60% dropout rate, that is as much a national security threat as Taliban or Haqqani insurgents. You understand. You understand that winning hearts and minds in cities like Baltimore, and cities like Brooklyn, cities like Chicago, and cities like Washington, D.C., is just as important in winning hearts and minds in cities like Al-Basra and Ghazni and Mosul. And most importantly, you understand that supporting our troops does not end simply when the deployments end. It's impossible to operate in any type of combat zone and come back the same person. The sights, the smells, the actions, and the emotions will stay with you for a lifetime. And that's fine. But what is truly important is that the outlet exists for our veterans to come home and to share their stories, and that friends and family and veterans and the supporters of veterans have an outlet to listen. And that's what the Telling Project is all about. And that's what this organization that we're about to present, that's fundamentally what they do. The Telling Project came out of two motives that truly embody civilian military spirit. Veterans wanting to speak about their experiences, and civilians wanting to understand and to listen. This initiative began in Eugene, Oregon in the summer of 2007. And I know Senator Merkley is here, and thank you so much for your support of them as well. But for over a year, this remarkable organization has toured the region and toured the country and allowed veterans the experience to become real, allowed the veteran experience to become real for those who without them would never be able to fully grasp the experiences that they went through. I'm honored to stand here today and to present to you the Telling Project.
So, let me tell you a story of how I learned a barrel of a gun gets hot. There I was. I grew up on a Navajo reservation during the time of the Hopi and Navajo land dispute. At the time, the policies were, if you're a Hopi living on a Navajo reservation or if you're a Navajo living on the Hopi reservation, you had to move regardless of how many generations your family lived there. My father's family lived on the other side of the Hopi reservation. So at night, coming home through the Hopi reservation, they would shoot at us. My dad would grab me behind the head, throw me down in the floorboard of the truck, grab his gun, and shoot back. Then he would hand me the gun and say, "Reload it." I remember how hot that barrel used to get. So when we rolled in Iraq for the very first time and started taking fire, I just remember thinking, I know this.
In the Marine Corps, if you're a squad leader, you pay for your squad members' mistakes. And I was a squad leader, and I'd always get thrashed. It got to the point where I was like, screw this. I don't want to be a squad leader anymore. I just want to be a fly on the wall. So I started screwing up myself, doing stupid things. I don't know. I didn't lock a lock completely on a foot locker or something. It's something small. It's something stupid, but it's something you don't do. So they had me on the quarterdeck. I think the drill instructor knew my weaknesses. Mountain climbers. For 2.5 hours.
Zero! How you doing, friend?
Good, sir!
No, you're not. You want to die right now, don't you?
Hi, sir! I want to die, sir!
Yeah? Well, guess what? I know what you're trying to do, friend. I know you don't want to be a squad leader anymore. I'm not stupid. I know you didn't lock that lock on purpose because you're smarter than that. You just don't do that. But guess what, friend? I'm not going to fire you. I'm just going to mess you up. I'm going to make your life miserable because I know you don't want to be a squad leader, but guess what? You are a squad leader. So stop messing up so I can stop messing you up.
Hi, sir! You're going to be in pain until they're tired of it. You're going to push until they're tired. That sums up Marine Corps boot camp right there.
Group, attention, hook. So this insurgency thing is starting up, and what they're going to do is push our company, our infantry company, plus a platoon from Charlie Company up to this little, well, we called it a fire base at the time, so that we can clear the routes there and the MPs can operate and do their thing. So I'm sitting on this bus, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to war in a bus? And it was a Kia, too, you know, K-I-A. I'm expecting a Chinook or a Black Hawk or a Deuce and a Half or something military. But instead, I'm going to war in a bus. We're Greyhound in the war, gang! Got a letter in the mail.
Got a letter in the mail.
Go to war or go to jail.
Go to war or go to jail.
Pack my bags and kiss my wife.
Pack my bags and kiss my wife.
Headed for the army life.
Headed for the army life.
Strawberry shortcake. Strawberry shortcake. Okay. You got to hear this. When I was on advance party going to Iraq for the first time, you know, I was expecting for the worst. And here I am. My whole responsibility was the whole transfer between one company and my company going there. And with that, you know, you got that transition where you kind of acquire things from what the company of Marines are leaving behind. And then I come across this gem, this rare find. I asked the Marine, is this okay if I have this? He's like, oh yeah, go ahead. And you got to think how odd this is, but I'm looking down, and this pillow is looking back at me. It was a small pillow. It was a pink pillow in the shape of a heart. But what was really weird about this is that there was a strawberry shortcake face looking right at me. You know, like, you've seen her before. You know, the freckles in her cheeks, the sparkle in her eye, and that soft smile. And the weird thing is that these little hands were popping on the side. You know, it kind of looks something like this. Yeah, and I promise you it was a lot cuter than what I just did, but you had to see this thing. So I'm like, okay, well, I got this pillow, and I got a camera. I've got an idea. So wave after wave of my Marines coming through the company, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You know, like the gnome in the bottom left corner of a picture? Well, I'm going to have that instead. So every time the Marine falls asleep, I put the pillow gently by them, and I stand back, and I'm like, click. Oh, that's a good shot. And before I know it, great. Oh, that's perfect. A little drool there. And bam. I had 50 or 60 of these photos throughout my time in Iraq. You know, weeks and weeks go by. But, you know, it was really funny to see their face and they're smiling, you know, how they got attacked by the strawberry shortcake pillow. But, you know, hey, anything to make the weeks go by, right?
I was a cargo weapons elevator electrician in the Navy from 1997 to 2001. And I had experiences. They weren't all good experiences, if that's okay. I was on Westpac the day the USS Cole was bombed. Well, actually, we were 60 miles from the coast of Yemen where it happened. And there's like this superstition. I think it's a Mexican Indian superstition. And what it says is, if you see an owl during the daylight, then death is coming or death is near. So it was really strange the day the Cole was bombed because, well, I was down in one of the spaces, I don't know, one of the engine rooms, and I stuck my head out for something. And my friend yells to me, he's like, "Hey, Stevenson, come check this out." I was married at the time. He's like, "Hey, Stevenson, come check this out." So I go over there and check my head out the side of the ship, and it was just really, really strange because there was an owl, and it was perched on the side of the ship. It was so strange. But it was there, I swear, and it freaked me out really bad. So when they told us that the Cole was bombed and there were 8 people dead, and then later that day they ended up telling us there were more like 17, I just remembered that owl. And it scared me because I knew these people had just died and everything, and I thought, does this mean something's going to happen to us too? I mean, they were waiting in line when it happened. Chow line. They were just waiting to eat. And one of the people that died that day, she was my age, and I remember she had just found out she was pregnant. And I remember thinking, you know, I bet they didn't wake up this morning and think, this is a good day to die. Am I not being open enough for you? So there was this officer on my previous ship, a young officer, prior enlisted guy, and I was standing watch. I think it was a balls to 4 watch, which is 12 to 4, right? So it's really dark. And he's walking up. And I'd seen him before, no big deal. And he starts talking to me. Well, he says to me, "You know, Stevenson?" And I say, "What, sir?" And he says, "How you doing tonight?" And I say, "Fine, sir." Oh, blah, blah, you know. And he says, "Well, you have a good night." So I say, "Okay." And I start to walk off. And he stops me. And it's dark. And he says, "You know, Stevenson, I have something to tell you." And I say, "What, sir?" And he says, "I know I'm probably going to break about 50 laws of the UCMJ right now, but every time you walk past me," and he goes, "every time you walk past me, my heart goes boom, boom, boom. I want to do crazy, nasty things to you. And you know what? No one's ever going to find out because I'm the boss." And I just looked at him, and my eyes got about this big because, I mean, I think he was married too, and I was just like, "Are you insane? I can't even believe you're saying these things to me." I thought this was only done in the movies. And I'd never had anyone speak to me that way before. I didn't know what to do about it. So I just laughed. I just looked at him and laughed. I was like, "You're so funny." I didn't know what to do, so I just went down to my berthing and said, "You have a good night, sir." And I told about 3 other females what had happened just in case because I was afraid since I wasn't going to do that with him. He may try to retaliate. I didn't know. And after that, I never saluted him again. And he never said anything about it. Wow, I'm making it sound horrible, but it really wasn't. I enjoyed my time on the Chancellorsville, especially the people I met on board that ship and the friends I met on board that ship. I had fun. For instance, the cooks would always make sure that, I don't know, if we were having burritos that day, that my tortillas were always fresh and hot. But then again, you know, I hardwired their meat grinders and fixed their rack lights so they could read, so it wasn't like they were really doing me any special favors. And I love to sing. I'm always singing, so we'd go out on the fantail at night, you know, the back of the ship that drags through the water. And I like to lean over the railing, so I'd like to watch the ship cut through the water because the algae would glow, and then, my gosh, you haven't seen stars like the stars out to sea at night. They're so pretty, so pretty. So I'd stand out there with my guy friends because most of my friends were guys. I mean, I was one of maybe 30 women on board. The ship had just been fitted for women. And we'd just hang out, talk about stuff, you know, whatever. It was just nice. I felt close to them. I had fun with those people. And I would sing to them. And they liked it. I have this theory that if we're told we're bad, that's the only idea we'll ever have. But maybe if we are surrounded in beauty, someday we will become what we see. 'Cause anyone can start a conflict. It's harder yet to disregard it. I'd rather see the world from another angle. We are everyday angels.
When my husband was an Army medic in Baghdad, I was in graduate school in creative writing in Oregon. I wrote this poem after his commanding officer was killed on Memorial Day, 2006. Planting, Hayhurst Farm. A week since the last bombing brought you to your knees. Since the day you spent shoveling human remains into a body bag marked for home. I don't know what to say. Neither of us has slept. But today, planting peppers on a farm in Oregon, nowhere near the war, I found myself midway down a row, on all fours, hands breaking open the rocky clods, coaxing the flimsy necks to stand. It felt like an exercise in good faith, my fingers blindly plunging, a brief tenderness exacted on every stalk. Some didn't make it through our rough caging. Some will never bear fruit. I don't know if this is even meant as consolation, but I want to tell you just how easy it became to plant the thin bodies in the ground, to mound up that dense soil and move on.
I'm lucky. I'm one of the luckiest men alive. It was my second deployment to Iraq. I was a corporal then. And during the deployment, I decided I really wanted to be a vehicle commander on a security team. So I volunteered to stay for 13 months instead of the usual 7. And some of my best friends stayed too. Arquette stayed, Torres stayed, Dan stayed. We all stayed for 13 months. And as they're splitting up our new company, I'm getting a feel for the staff and COs and officers, and they're naming off who's with what platoon and who's doing what. And they had me with 1st Platoon as a driver. And I pull my lieutenant aside, and I'm like, excuse me, sir. I volunteered to stay to be a vehicle commander. Why do you have me driving? He pulls Stewie and I aside, which Stewie ended up being the best gunner I've ever had, and says, listen, guys, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a boot. I'm a butter bar. I don't know what I'm doing. I need 2 senior corporals in my truck. That way, if things go bad, I don't do something stupid or something goes really bad. We're like, okay, we can live with that. Well, it finally comes down the pipe that we're going on our first mission. And the team that we were training with had never been hit by an IED before. The whole 7 months prior to us going to take over, they had not been hit once. So we go on our convoy, and I don't remember exactly where we went, but it was someplace fairly close. And we're driving down Uranium North, and I'm just driving along, scanning the road, and all of a sudden, boom! My first thought was, what the? My second thought was, that wasn't loud at all. Well, we were trained, if you get hit by an IED, you punch it. You get out of the kill zone as quick as possible. So I punched it. And there's dust everywhere, the window's busted, the hood's up like this. All I can see is this little square over here. So I'm driving literally like this, and I'm like, woohoo, yeah, that was nothing. And my vehicle commander is just freaking out. He's like, oh my God, drive, oh, go. And I'm like, I am. Well, we get over the hill, and we get out of the truck to assess the damage. And I'm just laughing hysterically. Because this is my 4th time outside the wire. My 4th time in the actual combat zone. Well, the IED strike, the insurgents buried the rounds too deep. So yeah, it went off, but it didn't come up with enough force to really do much damage. Yeah, it busted the window and blew the hood up, but it didn't even pop the tire, which is just amazing. I remember the lieutenant from the truck behind comes running up, and he's like, "Oh, come on, friend. What are you doing to us? Is everybody all right? Is everybody okay? Let's get back on base." So we get back in the truck, and we convoy back on base. We get back to the motor pool, and we get out, and I meet up with my new squad, and I'm just laughing hysterically still. And they're like, "Oh, my God, what happened? We just got hit by an IED. What's it look like?" And I remember my new lieutenant comes up to me, and he goes, "So how was the hit?" "Not as bad as my first one, sir." "First one? What do you mean first one?" "That's my second time getting hit. Didn't you know that?" "I don't know if I want you being my driver." "Come on, sir. 4 convoys, 2 hits? 2 for 4 is not that bad." My last deployment, my entire squad was really, really lucky. We were hit a ridiculous amount of times. 19 times in 6 months. So like I said, I'm one of the luckiest men alive. I'm still alive. I'm still in one piece. And for the most part, I'm still me.
Really a mixed blessing. The hardest part about it was not having soldiers around anymore. It's kind of like getting used to sleeping in a freezing room and then having someone snatch your blanket away. And being a college student is really daunting for me. I'm one of the oldest students in all of my classes, and I know that realistically, not everyone is watching me, but I feel like they are. I'm different now. My responses, my reactions to things are different. And a lot of times I find myself asking, how do I rejoin the human race? Nothing I tell anybody about Iraq or Afghanistan can be understood by people here. I mean, how could they? It's really frustrating when I tell people that I've served in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and the first question they ask me is, "Did you kill anyone?" Why should I answer that? Is that going to help them understand what I've been through or how I feel? Do you want to know how I feel? Honestly, most of the time, I don't feel a thing. Now, do you understand? Of course you don't. How do you explain to people what it feels like to live every day of your life expecting to die? Or what it feels like to wake up in the morning and wonder, am I going to get shot at or blown up today? We got so used to IEDs over there that we jokingly referred to it as the IED lottery. Even took bets on which truck was going to get hit before we rolled out a gate on a mission sometimes. How do you explain to people that sometimes a huge part of life in combat is joking about your own death? Having kids, I'm a single dad raising my 2 kids, and having kids is kind of like having soldiers. It's somebody else to focus on other than just me. Now I got to take care of these guys. And it sounds kind of messed up maybe, but in a way, my kids are replacements for my soldiers. When I was a squad leader in Iraq and a platoon sergeant in Afghanistan, I looked at every single one of my soldiers as if they were my own children. As a squad leader, I had 8 sons. And as a platoon sergeant, I had 42 sons. And they were my kids for 3 years. Now I only have 2 kids. And as frustrating as being a single dad can be sometimes, it really has helped me emotionally being responsible for their lives. But I have to make a conscious decision every day to teach my children things that are contrary to the way I think and feel. My daughter goes to school, and in our neighborhood, we have a lot of Middle Eastern kids dressed in their traditional clothing and doing their thing. And she naturally has questions about them. And I can't tell her what I really feel. I have 5 gold stars tattooed on my shoulder. It's 5 of my brothers who were killed by these people. And I know it doesn't make sense to think that way. I mean, the irony behind this all is that ethnically I'm half Iranian. I know it's not acceptable culturally or socially to feel like this, and it's certainly not the viewpoint that's upheld or supported by the Army. I know rationally that the Middle Eastern people of Portland had nothing to do with the deaths of my brothers. But it's how I feel. And I have my reasons for feeling that way. And maybe someday it'll get better. Maybe someday I'll learn to accept and not hate them. But not now. I'm working on it, but it's still too soon. You know, I wasn't born with this hatred. I became this way. And I want my children to have that clean slate that I had before the war, without any preconditions and without any hatred. And so I cannot tell my children how I really feel, because what I feel is a hatred that burns in me with an intensity that very few people can understand who have not been on the receiving end of an RPG or an AK-47 or an anti-tank mine laid by people that look just like people in my own neighborhood. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I chose this life. And please don't pity me either. I knew what I was doing. I didn't spend 3 years in combat for you. I went because my brothers went. And I did it gladly. And maybe because of that, it's been such a hard period in my life lately. My brigade just mobilized and went back to Iraq, and it's tearing me up. It's killing me being stuck here and knowing that my brothers are in combat again and that I can't be there with them. Sometimes being left behind is a fate far worse than bearing the scars that war produces on the body and soul. And I don't want to tattoo any more stars.
You know, when I decided to join the Navy, I was really gung-ho about it. I guess the idea of being in the military just did something to my mind. I guess I just wanted to challenge myself and see if I could do it. But I'm not 19 anymore, and I'm not 21 either. And I don't think the same way about lots of things. By the time I was getting out, I was just like, I want to be free, and I wanted to be free for so long. That's how I felt. But you know that saying, getting used to your sea legs? Well, when you've been on a ship for 5 months, it doesn't matter if you're on solid ground. You still feel like you're moving. You know what I mean? Shirley Cortez, United States Navy.
Maya Washburn, Oregon Army National Guard.
Lemuel Charlie, U.S. Army.
Shane Addis, United States Marine Corps.
Brian Friend, United States Marine Corps.
Elise Fenton, writer and teacher.
Yes, give them a round of applause.
Can we get a round of applause for the co-producers of the Telling Project, Jonathan Way and Max Rayner? Can you guys come out here, please? Come.
Come on.
And also the director of Telling Eugene and Telling DC, John Schmore, standing up right there, waving his hand. Oh, they're going to hide, aren't they? Anyway, thank you.
Oh, hey.
There they are. This is Max, and that's John.
Wow.
Thanks.
The Telling Project. What an impressive group of citizens here with us today.
Good job. Give me a hug.
That was very powerful, very powerful. What a tremendous day, right? Round of applause. First Lady Michelle Obama, Dr. Jill Biden, Alma Powell. These telling stories that they share with us today, very powerful and honest. And I think, and all the people that came out to support Mission Serve, this is like the very embodiment of what it could be like if the military organizations and communities come together with the civilian communities and organizations and what we can do for each other. And I just want to thank you for the honesty. Thank you. All right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sway. Thank you. We're at the end. I want to just remind everybody, this is a day of action. This is the very beginning of this. And I would like you to think about joining us. There's so much work to be done. There is a website, if you remember just one. It is www.milserv.org. www.milserv.org. I want one person to stand. He already is. I want him to raise his hand. The engine behind that is a consortium, basically, of organizations, but the Veterans Innovation Center has actually been very critical to our work. That is run and headed by Jeff Deutsch, and I just want to publicly acknowledge him. Jeff, would you raise your hand? Just terrific work to put this together with partners like Google, military.com, monster.com, and others. www.milserv.org. I'd finally like to thank, of course, Bank of America, first of all, for being our partner in this effort. Just really, really important to have a private-public partnership. George Washington University, Lisner Auditorium, just an incredible venue. Thank you, George Washington University, as well. Target, Glacier, thank you. PBS for putting on the Care Package Project. It's been very, very important for our military families. And Sway, you're special. Let me tell you, we just can't do this with a private-public partnership. We need our entertainment community to step up because they can reach so many young people and an audience, and there are a few in those communities who are committed to that. Sway is one of those. Thank you very much for doing this. Greatly appreciate it.
I'm honored.
Finally, because I know we need to get on with life, there is a special man in the back. He was traipsing the steppes of Mongolia when 9/11 happened. And he joined the Army as an infantryman and went to Afghanistan. I was lucky enough to find him. I had heard about him. We got together here, basically in Washington, D.C. I talked to him. We, at Be the Change, basically brought him on as the Director of Civilian Military Partnerships. He has just been incredible working with Jeff and the others that you see up here, basically in putting together these military-civilian partnerships. His name is Ross Cohen. Ross, would you come out? I know you're there somewhere. Just terrific. Ross Cohen. And thus it begins. We have a lot of work to do, but we have the right people to do it. Thank you very much for coming. It's been a wonderful day. Have a wonderful day. And a wonderful Veterans Day.
And if
Bye-bye.
you can,
Thank you.
watch MTV tonight at 9 p.m.